Hello, welcome to my channel, and thank you for being here. Today's talk continues in this dark theme of the political violence that engulfed South Africa in the 80s and 90s as we strove for our political freedom and the state resisted that striving for freedom. And big price was paid by the people, both those protesting and fighting for freedom, and those that became the victims of the pushback from the state. So the first image that you've seen and you're seeing now, the caption reads, Gertrude Mvubo surveys her destroyed home in which her husband died in the political violence that engulfed the region. Mbendle, Pietermaritzburg, KwaZulu-Natal, 1987. In this image, which was made when the Pietermaritzburg-based organization PECSA, which is the Pietermaritzburg Agency for Community Social Action, led by the time by Peter Kirchhoff, who was a valiant social justice activist, organized an opportunity for press people to witness the work that they were doing, assisting victims of violence, and offering that kind of support. And so myself, and at the time AFP, Agence France Presse photographer, a colleague of mine at the time, Walter Dladla, we got to accompany Gertrude Mvubo returning for the first time to her home that had been the subject of an attack in the civil war that was raging throughout the province, and especially around the townships around Pietermaritzburg and in the Midlands, places like Mpophomeni. And you see her here in what was her bedroom, visiting, as I said, the house that she had fled during the attack, and in which her husband had died during that attack. So that look on her face, which I guess it's difficult to articulate it, but it captures, I guess, the anger, the sorrow, the grief, the turmoil going on in her mind. And I think, you see the debris around her. The house was torched. And this grandchild that she has in her hand, who's oblivious, of course, but probably picking up the body language of her grandmother, and the contrast of the innocence of that child and an interrupted moment in this family's life, majorly interrupted. I mean, it's an understatement to say interrupted. But yes, people paid a huge price, and it's almost miraculous that peace returned to that region after the attempt to destabilize it to the extent that it did with the civil war that raged. The next image is connected, of course, in a way to the first image you've seen, because the caption reads "Bus torched in Stay Away, Mass Action, KwaMashu, Durban, 1987. So these images are made in the same year, and the image you're looking at now is an image about protest. The people fighting back against the economy, to paralyze the economy, as an action of last resort to a state that was not willing to engage, not willing to listen, not willing to accommodate the demands of an oppressed people at the time. And so stay away actions were something that was used by the organizations calling for these mass protests to enforce those stairways. So here, this it's an image that I had to enter into those when the stairways happened, enter into those townships, and that was quite, I was. It wasn't easy for activists to know that I was press. I wasn't wearing, press markings or anything like that. I could well have been sort of state surveillance, surveilling them. So, but yeah, I think it captures, you see the people, the couple walking past on the extreme right of the image, the expression on their face of uncertainty and probably even a bit of fear as to where these uncertain times are taking us, because activists may be clear about the mission that they have at hand, but for a lot of the ordinary working class people, or just the ordinary people, this level of unrest is very concerning. And of course, they were also facing deaths by hit squads and third force actors, and the state's proxy through the IFP was a factor, as this third image will attest, which is the caption reads, "A mother mourns the death of her United Democratic Front supporting son, who was abducted and slain in the Natal War, Mpopomeni, KwaZulu-Natal, 1987. And I guess, when one visited the victims of the assassinations and the abductions and the murders that were taking place at the time, the families, this is, we would visit the day after or a couple of days after, and it was one way, because it wasn't easy to actually to witness. These things happened, under the shadow of night, or it wasn't easy to be in a widespread countryside to actually witness the actual. Very difficult to do that. But so visiting the family afterwards was a way, and I have many of these images of mourning, usually women, mourning the deaths of their sons and their husbands and loved ones who died in this. This is arguably a more evocative one of such images. We shrouded the woman completely to shield her identity at the time, because there was a fear of the families being attacked as well. And but the images on the wall tell a story of who these people are. Devout Christians, no doubt. And the tragedy being that affiliation to a religious belief didn't insulate you from being a victim, in the same way, I suppose, that Christ was, as as the Christian belief states, Christ was himself sacrificed and died. So yes, these recordings are being made. I'm making this particular recording the day before Freedom Day, that we celebrate on the 27th of April, and I'll be posting tomorrow, the first of these images that I did, the recording I did a couple of days ago, that look into the violence. And I think it's a timely time to make these recordings and post these recordings to remind us of the price that we paid for our freedom, and that it's to be jealously guarded, and to the fight to be continued for economic freedom, because without, I may sound like an advocate of the Economic Freedom Front, but whatever that party stands for, there's no doubt that South Africans, the vast majority of South Africans, are nowhere near having economic freedom. And until that happens, these situations are, very easily could recur. And we have an urgency, not just because of the threat of violence, but because we need to honor the lives of South Africans, and their right to live lives of dignity and peace and dignity and prosperity. Yes, we live in a wealthy country. Why shouldn't we be prosperous? So I'll end it there and say thank you for watching. And more information on myself and my work can be found on my website, a link to which, including my blog and email address, can be found in the video description below. If you like this talk, remember to click the like button and press subscribe. It helps the channel grow.